Cyprus press pimut pate hain.
Kya kare? They are trying to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Another one, kya karo?
Inshallah, I hope they will not be able to do any harm, inshallah.
Inshallah, that's what we are hoping also. So let us see what they will do. Messaging वारिया पानी की.
No, I can understand.
क्या शुक्रान हु क्या शुक्रान.
Doctor साहब आप जो काकुन हापुत वनी क्यों तो ये तो इत क्या?
वैसे तो ट्रावल ने क्या तो मगर वही पता है कि they will इम्कान से ये हर कोई यूज़.
You team दो गए हैं.
Yeah. इंचना सिर्फ अकोई चीज़ जितने कागज़ में कशीर फंस गए जिसका जाकर तेरे तोकुन के.
Yeah, that's understandable, but inshallah, everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That is right. That is right.
Let's hope for the best. And you know, even in your family, how many people have really sacrificed so much for the cause.
Yeah.
May Allah help.
Sorry, toy youth call go.
No, I understand, but what I am saying that not a single family is untouched.
Everybody is touched there. Everybody. मैं वन्यो एक नफरन दिल्ली बुगोस एक दो सिंगापुर पर दिल्ली ऐसा ही मैं दोस्त तक बैंकर दोपहर है क्या क्या चीज़ बासान it was 91 बुवाने आखिर बासा goes I had gone for only 3-4 days मैं ये गैस ने वहीं बीत किया तो ना गैस कांजाम मुश्किल तो उन क्या है No, Bugwas Pine Gary Pate school as time, Burnout School I used to study, long time back. Most as goes but that Mazas Park. That you wish me as so many graves. I also stopped and cried there in front of those graves. This is in every mohalla now.
Yeah.
Remember, it will never, we will be reminded every day of this. So how will we forget it? How will we forget? Nobody will forget it.
Yeah.
क्या शू करा जनाब वो यू टर्न शू करा बदल क्या was it a planned U-turn or it was a U-turn?
You want to ask your leadership's quality.
मैं बुझो आख चीज ऐसा was Dr. Zohur. He used to be principal medical college. Dr. Zohur is?
Yes.
Yeah. He was
Mubin Saab, let us say salam to Dr. Nazir Gilani Sahab. He is also.
Salam alaikum, Janab. Yeah, mute, Janab, mute.
Mute.
Assalamualaikum. और शाह साहब क्या हाल है?
क्या जनाब ठीक ठाक है सर?
बिल्कुल दुआ.
Mubin Saab, you can speak in Urdu because there are professors and others.
अच्छा, Dr. Zohur was our principal medical college and he used to be also head of department of medicine. One of my friends went to him for leave. He made an application and as head of department, he sanctioned it. But when it reached the principal, he was the same man. He rejected it. This friend of mine went to him and told him, what is this? You approved it as principal, as head of department, and now you are rejecting it as principal. I said, as head of department of medicine, I could understand your problem. But as principal, I know you are very important. You have to stay. You cannot be called leave.
Mubin Saab, why are you saying it? Are you linking it with something?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Alaikum salam.
Jazakallahu khair. Na'udzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. First of all and foremost, I want to welcome you all to this webinar on Kashmir. Today, alhamdulillah, we've been joined and blessed with presence of a lot of dignitaries from across the globe to shed some light on the current events that have unfolded, especially after the 5th of August 2019, when India unilaterally, unconstitutionally abrogated the Article 370 and 35A, surrendering the only instrument or the only leverage they had in temporary administration of the Kashmir, making it a complete illegal occupation by the Indian government in Kashmir. Since 5th of August 2019, a lot of events have unfolded, especially between India and Pakistan. There have been so-called confidence building measures. There have been reenact of the ceasefire line, a move towards normalizing situation relations between India and Pakistan. And a lot has been derived from various quarters around the globe on what this actually means for the issue of Kashmir. Some even see this as a win-win situation. Since then, we've seen an effort from Pakistan, especially on the diplomatic and political level, to bring India to a negotiating table, to make sure that we can reach to a peaceful resolution on the issue of Kashmir, including trying to open up trade barriers, trade relations with India. Yet, yesterday we've heard there was a strong stance from President Imran Khan to say, Prime Minister Imran Khan, that any normalization between India and Pakistan can only take place when the issue of Kashmir has been resolved. And today we are hoping, inshallah, with our esteemed panelists and guests from across the globe, who can then give their own perspectives on what does this actually mean. One of the key objectives that we want to derive from today's webinar is understand what is the current policy and situation between India and Pakistan. And most important, the current events that have unfolded, are they taking us to the objective, towards our objective of the freedom from the illegal Indian occupation, or are they taking away from our objective? I would like to, inshallah, invite, we have a panel of guests and we had to slightly amend the order of the speakers. President Sardar Masood Khan Saab has got some prior commitments and inshallah will be joining us a bit later. So we will inshallah continue and pick up from there. I would like to invite Professor Khurshid Saab, who's our esteemed guest, a scholar who is, alhamdulillah, a well-known personality across the globe, not just in the field of Kashmir, but he holds a high regards as a very world-renowned research scholar, an educationist, and an economist, and also a versatile writer. He also holds an honorary doctorate in education from the University of Malaysia. Professor Khurshid Ahmad Saab has spent a big part of his years lecturing around the world. He's also participated in more than 100 international conferences and seminars on various subjects. Throughout his life, Professor Saab has championed the cause of Kashmir across the globe. And in recognition of his scholarly contributions, he was awarded the Pakistan's highest civilian award, Nishan-e-Imtiyaz. He has also received the King Faisal Award for his services to Islam. I would like to request Professor Khurshid Saab, inshallah, to start this webinar.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I'm delighted to be with you in this program. In my view, Kashmir and Palestine are the most important problems confront the Muslim movement. Although Muslims are facing problems almost everywhere in the world, but these two key problems, they deserve to be given the priority and the effort they deserve. There are three issues in my view at the moment. First, the 5th August 2019 actions of the Indian government relating to Article 370 and 35A. It's correct that that has not been our key problem. But what makes it important is that this was the Indian way of defining relationship between occupied Kashmir and Indian Union. Although it was a fraudulent document, first, a betrayal from Sheikh Abdullah, and secondly, whatever was agreed between Sheikh Abdullah and Nehru, even that was not honored. And last moment, without taking Abdullah into confidence, changes were made. And then over 30 changes were made over the years. But now what has been done is very serious because it has led to the declaration of Kashmir as Indian territory, 2 units, and their annexation with India. Secondly, citizenship, which was not available to non-Kashmiris, that door has been opened. The right to buy land and property for non-Kashmiris. The real purpose is to change the demography and the ground situation. So this makes it an immediate issue, and that is why our first demand is that the actions taken on 5th of August have to be undone. Secondly, the situation of human rights, the repression, the oppression, crimes that are being committed against the people, innocent children, women, civilians. No family, no household is unaffected. And of course, this began from 1930. But last few years, under BJP, and particularly after August 2019, the repressive policies of the government and the action of the Indian Army, they deserve to be condemned, exposed, and it's very important that these should be fully projected in detail throughout the world. In my view, it's very important that individual interviews, personal stories, pictures, this is a very important area so that we expose the repressive regime, the violation of human rights that take place. But the real issue is more than that. While both these are important, the real issue is the right of self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the decision about the future of this state to be decided by the people of Jammu and Kashmir in accordance with the resolutions of the Security Council, the General Assembly of the UN, and the understanding and commitment between India, Pakistan, UN, and world community. So that is the real issue. Unless this right is given to the Kashmiri people, the problem cannot be solved. So I think this three-frontal effort is needed, focusing on the August 2019 outrageous steps, human rights violation, exposing India and its oppression, its occupation. And thirdly, the real issue, that of right of self-determination. Now, in this context, the Pakistani people and the people of Jammu and Kashmir are on the same page. And inshallah, the Pakistani nation would always stand by it. But unfortunately, our governments have made mistakes. And the way the Kashmir Committee and its leadership has taken a stand and expressed views in the present regime, to me, is very disappointing, very disturbing. This last statement of the Prime Minister, and categorical statement that relationship with India cannot be restored, cannot be normalized, trade, economic relationships will not take place unless Kashmir issue is resolved, is reassuring. But unfortunately, there are lobbies, there are groups who are trying to say that bury the past, forget the past, make new relationships, and then if presently Kashmir could be put on the back burner after building relationships, some kind of solution will work out. This is totally fallacious. Totally fallacious. We have to resist it. So in my view, the two fronts on which all of us have to act vehemently is one, the global scene where world opinion, media, human rights groups, all platforms available. We have to reach and protect. World opinion has an important role to play, and particularly America, Britain, who have played a role in creating this problem, and also their role in the UN resolutions. So in that context, I think global effort at a very vast scale by government of Pakistan, by Kashmiri organizations, by different groups is the greatest need of the hour. But secondly, it's also important that there should be enough pressure within Pakistan so that the group that want to sidetrack could be checked, and Pakistan government pursues effectively the national policy which was laid down by Azad and which has been nation's real desire. This is what is needed to do. And I hope that this group can play a very important role in that direction. With these words, I would like to say that one more thing that we should keep in view is that liberation struggle, even if it has to use in self-defense violent means, is never terrorism. This has been the declared policy of the UN General Assembly. All the liberation struggles in which violence was involved from the state side and then a response to that have never been treated as terrorism. They are part of the liberation struggle. India has tried to project the freedom struggle, the resistance movement in Kashmir as terrorism. Unfortunately, Musharraf, during his period, this Indian game was somehow Pakistan owned it. It was a disaster. We must take up that issue. We must make it very clear that what is happening in Kashmir is a popular movement, is a liberation struggle. It's peaceful, it's democratic, it is popular. But if it is being crushed by use of force by the state, and in that process, violence takes place, it has nothing to do with terrorism. So from that viewpoint, this aspect also, in my view, deserves to be clarified and boldly and clearly expressed so that the liberation struggle character of the Kashmir movement is highlighted. That is what deserves to be projected in promoting the cause of Kashmir. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khairan, Professor Saab. Really kind words there, and alhamdulillah, yes, indeed, Kashmir is an issue that we need to highlight on every platform. And I would really like to say my thank you and gratitude. And I know you have not been feeling well for the last couple of days, and yet you're here dedicated and giving us your time and wisdom. So Jazakallahu khairan for your continued support and your guidance. And inshallah, we hope that we will continue to receive your guidance and support for the Kashmir.
My support and my prayers, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan, Professor Saab. Now I would like to request Dr. Nazir Gilani Saab, who's a well-known figure, a jurist, specializing in the prudence of United Nations resolution and the Kashmir case. Dr. Gilani Saab is quite advocate and vocal on the rights and the dignities and the security and the rights of self-determination for the people of Kashmir since early 1984s. Not just in the United Kingdom, but also in United Nations and various other international forums. He has received written statements from Jammu Kashmir Commission of Human Rights, where he serves as the chair of the organization. And these have been released in the Human Rights Council sessions in Geneva, as well as the as a General Assembly documents on Kashmir. Dr. Gilani has remained a member of International Platform of Jurists for the East Timor since 1984, and as a jurist has contributed to the cause and the independence movement of East Timor as well. I would now like to ask Dr. Nazir Gilani, inshallah, to give us his perspective, especially focusing on the United Nations resolutions and the current events and the way forward on Kashmir.
Since we have His Excellency, the President of Azad Kashmir, I think it would be better to hear him first. If you would very kindly see to it that we benefit from his presentation, then you can squeeze me in at an appropriate level.
Jazakallah khairan. Indeed, inshallah, what we have had sort of to change a slight order of the things. So inshallah, President Saab will be joining us. And
he has joined us.
He has, and he has requested, let me just reconfirm. But I think we can continue and we can have President Saab in a bit. Can I just put on here? If you continue, inshallah, we will have President Saab joining us in a bit and who will be speaking.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor Khurshid Saab. Your Excellency, President of Azad Kashmir, Faiz Saab, and Mobeen Saab and others who are on the panel. I think, Zafar, I would wish to congratulate you that you have carried forward the legacy of your father, Senior Nazir Qureshi Saab. I would like to restrain myself to what invitation you have given us, that is that you are today uh, reminding us that it is the 73rd anniversary of UN resolution of 21st of April 1948. And of course, you would like to hear it in the context of 5th of August 2019, what the Indians have done. I think this is for the first time that anyone, any group, or any individual has taken heart to or has revisited the basics, that is the UN template. For the first time, you have taken this step, and I must appreciate you and your team to put on the agenda the resolution 47, which was passed on 21st of April 1948. Briefly, you will be hearing from various learned people. Briefly, this is the anchor sheet of our case. The April 21st, 1948 resolution. We have forgotten it, and you have brought it back from the archives. It had 4 very important elements. The first was the formation of the government in Srinagar, which had to be a government of all the principal elements. It would have had the representation from Azad Kashmir, representation from Gilgit-Baltistan, representation from the Indian side of Kashmir. So this government had to be a government of all the political elements. If it were to be formed today, Hurriyat would have been one of the principal elements. They would have qualified. So every principal political element had to send a representative, a responsible representative who would have taken place at the ministerial level to take part in the conduct of the right of self-determination or the plebiscite. So we had an opportunity from April 21st, 1948 to work on this, to demand the formation of a government in Srinagar comprising of all principal elements. We have missed the bus on that. We did not ask for that for the last, as you have rightly said, 73 years. So it is a dereliction of duty, and we remain responsible, each one of us, that why did we not keep focus on demanding that there should be a government as envisaged by the United Nations in Srinagar? Then we would not have the kinds of governments that we have had from 48 to date. So we would have been in control of the day-to-day political mechanism of Srinagar. But at the same time, there would have been a connectivity between Srinagar, Muzaffarabad, Gilgit, and whosoever. This resolution 47 also had given us a very important discipline to keep an eye on the Indian Army. It puts 3 restraints on the number, on the location, and on the behavior of Indian Army. So if we had followed the UN template or followed this resolution, we would have controlled the movement of the Indian Army. We would have controlled their behavior, their number, and their location. So whenever there would have been a violation, we would have raised hue and cry and forced them to retreat. We did not do it, and we have 900,000 Indian Army today. Then you had the rights. This resolution is the only resolution, rather the principal and the main resolution which guarantees rights to the people of Kashmir. And it demands of India to ensure to release all the political prisoners from the state government. And it means that Indians could not take a Kashmiri as a prisoner, but they had a duty to see that Srinagar government does not take anyone as a political prisoner. So the rights of the people of Kashmir were guaranteed in this resolution. So we today see that the whole Thaw is full of Kashmiris. Even for the first time in the history of Jammu and Kashmir, we see Kashmiri Muslim women taken prisoners and lodged in Tihar jail. It has never happened from 1846 March that they ever took any Kashmiri Muslim female from Srinagar, from the state, and she was lodged or they were lodged in a prison in Delhi. So, and then a very important right which is embedded in this resolution is that all the citizens who had left for one or the other reason shall be free to return in safety and in dignity to take part in the referendum in Kashmir. So we have 2.5 million Kashmiri refugees, 5 generations, living in 4 provinces of Pakistan. So these have a right to return in safety and dignity and take part in all the rights, which includes the right of self-determination. As Professor Saab has very rightly pointed out, to an attempt to change the demography of Kashmir, but if these 22.5 million refugees living in various provinces of Pakistan today demand or had demanded that we will return to our own homes, it would have been a serious barricade to India. They would not have had courage to go for any demographic change or to dish out the domicile certificates to non-Muslims. So it also said there would be no victimization, and it also protected the rights of the minorities. So army was under the microscope, the rights were guaranteed, and the government was to be formed, and then there was a balance. The balance was that if the commission or the government of Srinagar felt that it is insecure, it could ask the commission to add to the military strength depending on the consent of Pakistan as well. India and Pakistan and the commission and the government, which would have been formed by all these principal elements, they could have inducted, Pakistan could have taken part and sent it a share of military people or forces. So we would have been in a much better position. So this was as regards the April 21st 48 resolution is concerned. I have just tried to rush through quickly, but we could not keep an eye on the behavior, number, and location of the Indian Army. We could not guarantee the rights, and we could not assume to have the government that was to be had in Srinagar, and we did not ask for the balance. So now, after 5th of August 2019, what to be done? Because what India had to do, they did it, but it's all a violation because India has committed an offense under UN resolutions against another party, which is Pakistan, and against the right of self-determination of the people of Kashmir and against the United Nations. This is the UN position. So the way forward is that we need to correct ourselves. We need to be proactive. The government of Azad Kashmir should respond by activating Article 11 of its constitution. So the Article 11 recognizes the plebiscite, and this institution is within the competence or proximity of the President of Azad Kashmir. It is an exclusive right of the President of Azad Kashmir. He has 2 rights, his competency could be divided under Article 10 and under Article 11. But my understanding is under Article 11, as regards the structuring of an institution for plebiscite, he does not have any restraints. He is free. And of course, it is a government which will raise a summary and the government will have the advice, but he is the trigger. There's no restraint. There's my opinion on it, and there's a court judgment on it. A judgment was given on JKCHR petition, which we lodged in 1992. It was decided in 1999, after 7 years. So it's a comprehensive judgment on the rights of the president under Article 11 and the need to appoint a plebiscite advisor. I will not go into what arguments were there in the court, but one argument, since His Excellency the President is there and the Khurshid Sahib is there, we were surprised to hear from the government that India is not ready for plebiscite, so we cannot appoint a plebiscite advisor. Imagine, government of Azad Kashmir arguing in the High Court of Azad Kashmir that India is not yet ready. So meaning your constitutional duties are subservient to Indian consent. So this was the level of understanding. So we need to move forward and we need to correct our position. We have not been correctly addressing addressing the duties that are there for the right of self-determination in the Constitution of Azad Kashmir from 1970. So for the last 52 years, the government of Azad Kashmir has failed to conduct in accordance with the Constitution in respect of right of self-determination or plebiscite. So I think we don't have a better person than the one that we have at this point, who is the constitutional head in Azad Kashmir, understands both the style, the diction, and the phrase, how to hammer, how to marshal, how to peddle the Kashmir case. But he cannot do it if he remains extraneous to Article 11 or Article 8 of 1970 Constitution, but now today we have 74. The other thing is that where we have failed, India did what it had to do, but it has no merit. What India did, we should have responded by appointing a plebiscite advisor there and then the next day, or formed a structure to look after plebiscite or to look into the UN template. Even in Pakistan, Azad Kashmir, there are people do not understand the jurisprudence of the Kashmir case and the UN template in particular. Another thing that, please signal when I would be reaching, nearing my time, or maybe I take 30 seconds, a minute more. Government of Pakistan and government of Azad Kashmir are in partnership in Azad Kashmir under UNCIP resolutions. So it's a very important partnership. Constitutional partnership under UNCIP. So the executive authority of the Azad Kashmir still remains supreme and intact. I would also flag here the Karachi Agreement of April 1949. It has 21 subjects. 8 are handled by Pakistan and 13 are handled by Azad Kashmir. 5 by the government of Azad Kashmir and 8 at that point were handed over to Muslim Conference. But that means the Azad Kashmir because Muslim Conference used to be part of the government at that point. So we have never taken any action in regard to those 13 subjects that we have undertaken under the Karachi Agreement as well. So I will conclude just finally that the Azad Kashmir government is a provisional government to do 2 things: to provide a better administration and a better government until we exercise our right of self-determination. So if you take away the interest of right of self-determination from the government of Azad Kashmir, it collapses. It does not have any merit. Thank you very much.
Jazakallahu khairan, Dr. Gilani Saab. It was really enlightening. As always, I've heard you, alhamdulillah, in the European Parliament and even in UK. And it's really refreshing to know the amount of knowledge that you have on the legalities, especially on the United Nations, when it comes to Kashmir issue. Once again, I want to thank you for your valuable time and contribution here. As you clearly said, today, the topic we have is on Kashmir. It's about India and Pakistan relations and the Kashmir imbroglio. And the key question that we really want to hear about, the key points is, yes, we know we are sort of looking at the thaw of relations between India and Pakistan. We have over 17 United Nations resolutions that support the Kashmir issue. But the question that arises is, what is our policy going forward? What can we do to make sure that we reach our objective of right of self-determination for the people of Kashmir? And in this case, we had also invited Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, our Ambassador of Pakistan to the United Nations, who unfortunately was not able to make it to this conference live, but he has sent a video message, which I will play just now in a few seconds. I don't think we need a detailed introduction of Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, but just for our viewers online, Ambassador Munir Akram Saab is a Pakistani diplomat who was appointed as the permanent representative of Pakistan to the United Nations. Earlier, he held the post from 2002 to 2008, during which he also served 2 terms as the president of the United Nations Security Council. On 23rd of July, Munir Akram was elected as the president of United Nations Economic and Social Council. I will now play the video message that Munir Akram Saab has sent us through.
Dear brothers and sisters, dear friends.
Can everybody hear that?
Thank you.
Can everybody hear that? The voice?
Yes.
For inviting me to speak at this webinar. I would like to commend the Kashmir Global Campaign and its chairman, Mr. Zafar Ahmed Qureshi, for organizing this timely discussion on India-Pakistan relations and Kashmir and the way forward. First, it is essential to clarify that any conclusion that there is already a thaw in Pakistan-India relations is at best premature. An agreement was reached by the Director Generals of Military Operations of the 2 sides to restore the 2003 ceasefire understanding as of midnight of 24-25 February 2021. This was negotiated through the normal hotline between the 2 Director Generals of Military Operations. The reference to accommodating each other's concerns covers only operational issues relating to the maintenance of the ceasefire. Pakistan has consistently called for strict observance of the ceasefire as provided for in Security Council resolutions and decisions and the 2003 understanding. We are mindful that the civilian casualties resulting from firing along the line of control on both sides are our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. Moreover, ceasefire violations can escalate into a general conflict, which is not in the interest of either Pakistan or our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. War conditions could provide a cover for the Indian occupation forces to perpetrate even wider atrocities against the people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's agreement to revive the ceasefire agreement is obviously related to the Modi government's preoccupation with several internal challenges: farmers' protests, the COVID pandemic, economic stagnation, as well as the disastrous confrontation with China last year along the line of actual control in Ladakh. It should not be forgotten that not only Pakistan, but China also protested against the BJP government's unilateral measures of 5th August 2019 as violating China's, quote, territorial integrity, unquote. As a result of its unilateral measures in Jammu and Kashmir, India now has to face both Pakistan and China. There have been many stories in the Indian and Western media asserting that Pakistan is about to normalize relations with India following the ceasefire agreement. At the Islamabad Security Conference on 17th and 18th March, both Prime Minister Imran Khan and Foreign Minister Qureshi stated that Pakistan desires to normalize relations with India and open a dialogue once it creates, I quote, conducive environment for such a dialogue by halting its human rights violations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir and rescinding the unilateral measures imposed since 5 August 2019. Of course, India has also posed its familiar preconditions: an end to violence and terrorism. This phrase was even included in Mr. Modi's congratulatory message to our Prime Minister on Pakistan's National Day. Prime Minister Imran Khan's reply to Mr. Modi reiterated that a solution to the Jammu and Kashmir dispute was essential for normalization of Pakistan-India relations. And last week, Foreign Minister Qureshi explained the Pakistan cabinet's rejection of the Economic Coordination Committee's proposal for limited trade with India by stating clearly that opening trade with India was contingent on its rescission of the unilateral measures of 5 August 2019 and post that date. It remains to be seen if conditions will be created to enable a resumption of the Pakistan-India dialogue. There are many friends of the two countries who are encouraging such a dialogue. Even if a dialogue is resumed under any set of conditions, a just settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute will be Pakistan's core objective. In the final analysis, any solution to the dispute will require the agreement of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, including the people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's efforts to consolidate its annexation of occupied Jammu and Kashmir have not succeeded, despite the deployment of an occupation force of 900,000. One Indian soldier to every 8 Kashmiri man, woman, and child. Even the pro-Indian political parties have rejected the post-5 August 29 measures. All Kashmiris are united in their demand for Azadi from Indian rule. The attempt to change the demography of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir will also ultimately prove futile. India's steps to turn Kashmir's Muslim majority into a minority constitutes a violation of the UN Security Council resolutions, the Geneva Conventions, as well as the Genocide Convention. Those responsible for instituting such demographic change and for committing any mass atrocity and crime will be accountable under international law. And in accordance with precedents established in East Timor, Namibia, and elsewhere, if a UN plebiscite was ever held, the settlers from outside Jammu and Kashmir would be legally unable to participate in it. Our Kashmiri brothers and sisters should be reassured that regardless of the possible lowering of tensions with India, and even in case a dialogue with India is resumed, Pakistan will continue to demand self-determination for the people of Jammu and Kashmir and an end to India's human rights violations against them. This will remain the principal focus of Pakistan's diplomacy. What is most important at this time is continued unity and full mutual trust between Pakistan and our brothers and sisters in Jammu and Kashmir. Inshallah, they will ultimately succeed in their struggle for self-determination and Azadi. I thank you very much.
Again, I want to thank Munir Saab for his contribution. He is in a flight at the moment, that's why he could not make it live, but Alhamdulillah, as you clearly heard from his message, Pakistan remains committed to resolving the issue of Kashmir first, and then, inshallah, renegotiating normalizations between India and Pakistan relations. We've got more speakers, inshallah, who are here to provide their insight onto the same issue on how we can move this forward, what the current challenges are, and what is our way forward. I want to now invite Brother Arshad Mohsin, who hails from Kuwait, and he has been, alhamdulillah, active in the human rights and especially the Kashmir sphere, particularly focusing on Kashmir and the Indian Muslims, to present his views on the topic. Brother Arshad Mahmood. I think you're on mute, Brother Arshad Mahmood, so we can't actually hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dignitaries and especially the President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, I welcome you all on this great discussion that we are having at the moment on Jammu and Kashmir. I have two important points to discuss, and they are related. As I'm in Kuwait, as you introduced, and I would bring the analogy of Kuwait to Kashmir. What happened when Saddam annexed Kuwait militarily? On 2nd August 1990, Saddam invaded and annexed Kuwait. The United States led efforts to organize an international coalition working through the United Nations Security Council, passed Resolution 660, demanding Iraq's immediate and unconditional withdrawal. That was first, Resolution 660. Resolution 661, imposing economic sanctions, and Resolution 663, declaring the annexation of Kuwait null and void. Gentlemen, I'm talking about three resolutions: 660, 661, and 663. Brother Zafar just now told that we have 17 UN resolutions on Kashmir. 17. I want you to compare those 17 versus these three. The 17 resolutions that we have on Kashmir, in fact, have been rendered null and void by the Indian government. Whereas the three resolution, 660, 661, and 663, was not only adopted, but it was implemented on the ground, and Kuwait was freed militarily. Okay, so what does the United States do on 5th August 2019 when India militarily annexed Kashmir? It is 5th August 2019. There it was 2nd August 1990, both in the month of August, 3 days apart. Let me tell you what happens when India militarily occupies Jammu and Kashmir. There is a United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, USCIRF. It's a US federal government commission created by the International Religious Freedom Act, 1998. USCIRF commissioners are appointed by the president and the leadership of both political parties in the Senate and the House of Representatives. USCIRF's principal responsibilities are to review the fact and circumstances of violation of religious freedom internationally and to make policy recommendations to the President of the United States of America and to the Secretary of State and to the Congress. The important point here is the situation is exactly the same. It's military occupation, military annexation. But why does America choose to send a religious body there? Nobody has ever bothered to think about it. Why America choose to send USCIRF, United States Commission for International Religious Freedom? Didn't we see the angle here? Didn't America understand it, the situation, much better than anybody else? That it is, this entire Kashmir situation is embedded in deep religiosity. And you can say Islamophobia. That's why America chose to send USCIRF and not any military or political or diplomatic delegation to India. One must focus on this, why they chose to do so. When Kuwait was occupied, there were 3 resolutions. They were implemented and Kuwait was freed after 7 months of occupation. Jammu and Kashmir is occupied for so many years. 17 resolution. Are we seeing any light of the day on these resolutions? No, we are not. See what happens when Indian forces occupied on 5th of August. The USCIRF tried to approach the Indian government for a visit visa for its delegate, which was humiliatingly denied by the Modi government. They denied the visa to USCIRF, denied outrightly. And the chairperson of the USCIRF, the spokeswoman, Daniel Soran Ashbahian, said its team wanted to travel to India for a constructive dialogue with the government. As a pluralistic, non-sectarian, and democratic state, all the 3 in question, pluralistic, non-sectarian, democratic. Why does America have to mention these words? A state and a close partner of the United States, India should have the confidence to allow us visit, a baby dialogue. You should have a confidence in coming and talking with us, which would give it an opportunity to convey its views directly to USCIRF in a constructive dialogue. What are we approaching and how are we approaching? You are approaching the religious side of the situation. America, the United States of America, is sending a religious delegate, a delegate that's entitled to explore the situation on the religious front. What I mean to say is America is right when they send this USCIRF. They are right. Because the situation in Kashmir, more than being political and more than being territorial, it is deeply religious. You haven't seen after 5th August, because I am from the ground. After 5th August 2019, each and every political leaders of the BJP and RSS went on the rampage, announcing to every dictator in Indian territory, everywhere, and said, now we have white women and you can marry them. We have the white Kashmiri girls. They are the trophy of the war. And they're telling it to their Hindu population that now you can go pick them up. Nobody heard that. The Chief Minister of Haryana, literally the Chief Minister of a state next to Delhi, and announced this, okay, now guys, here are the Kashmiri women for you. We have occupied this land and the women are free for you to choose and pick. That's why America sent this religious delegation, to find out what was happening within the society. And this has been happening for a long time. We have, with our own eyes in our age, seen Kashmiri women literally begging on the streets of India, in Delhi and Hyderabad and other places, literally begging. These young women and girls, completely insecure. The kind of terror that has been inflicted on them and the Kashmiri families, especially the women and children, that they had nowhere to go, no security, no safety anywhere. And those who give them shelter, even in Delhi, if you give the shelter to a Kashmiri man or Kashmiri family, the second day the NIA will come and pick you up, that you are collaborating with the terrorists. These are the people you call the citizens of India, these Kashmiris, who when you give shelter, you are considered as a terrorist and you are charged with NIA sedition and all this. Reality is something else. It is imbibed deep within the Hindu society that hates the name of Islam and Muslims to the core. And America knows it very well. The change of demography is just the step, that the most natural step that they were going to take. Demographic change. If you ask me that how all these things, are we consider ourselves responsible for that? We Indian Muslims, we consider ourselves greatly responsible for this situation in Kashmir. We never acted on the ground. We never. You saw when we believed in all these three words, that democratically elected and secular society and a secular government. What happens to the chief minister of Kashmir? Those who chose to dance at the tune of the BJP or the Hindutva government, for example, Farooq Abdullah, you will see his video dancing on Bollywood tunes, dancing on the tune of his Hindutva masters. And then one fine evening on 5th August 2019, the Hindutva government chose to change the dancers. I don't like your dance anymore. Stop dancing. We will have our own dancers. Now, these dancers who were democratically elected chief ministers and shareholders, what happened to them? They were house arrested and they were thrown mostly into the jail. Dancers are changed. So is there any use of you dancing at the tune of these occupying forces? See, my friend, let me tell you frankly, it's a military occupation. Dot. Period. What happens when a military occupation takes place? A military invasion on a civilian population. It was not a confrontation between two armies. It's a military invasion and occupation of a civilian population. This is the case. What's the solution? Resolutions, they don't care. Resolutions, they don't entertain, they don't respect, they don't merit it at all. And America sends the religious delegation that this is deep within your society. Yes, this is deep within our society. The solution, my friends, as we feel on the ground, is that we require a safety procedures first of all. And let me tell you very frankly, because I have always been very frank on these issues. See, when Pakistan was created, the migration happened. When the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, says that we have to make the state of Medina, MashaAllah, I congratulate him on his thoughts and his ideas. Alhamdulillah. But the migration of people never stopped in the state of Medina. It didn't, by a nation state on the border. So this is now the duty of the Pakistani nation, which was created on the basis of this great the state of Medina concept, to keep the doors open. This is necessary. If you close the doors, naturally the other side is going to create havoc as they are doing. That's one point. Secondly, the Kashmiri and including the Indian Muslims they were fools for 70 years. They had been thinking differently. They were taught and given a different morpheme to think that, okay, all right, you are in secular society and we are democratic and you will have your rights. Nobody had any rights at all. Look at how the graph fell down. We have many commissions in Indian government by themselves. Okay, these commissions give the report that this was a planned arrangement for the population to deprive them of all their rights, rights to education, rights to society, rights to house. All their rights were snatched very, very systematically. And now the entire Indian Muslim population has been thrown into dire poverty, extreme helplessness, and there is nothing that you can do about them. And they don't even have now the spine to stand and face the tyranny of the Hindutva government. This is the truth. Okay, the population is the only factor that we have on our side. That is 350 million altogether. That includes our Kashmiri brothers and sisters. The situation out there is to be dealt in a different perspective at the moment. So it's not only, to my mind, it's not only an India-Pakistan issue. It's an issue of a huge Hindutva government which has got military and muscle power. It's got all these kind of power, and a population which is helpless and unarmed, a population that has been already deprived from all their powers. And this population is facing 9 million military forces, okay, fully armed, Habibi. So let me conclude this, that to my mind, as the modern solution, as we have seen, and that solution is the Nagorno-Karabakh solution. That is my advice or suggestion for this meeting. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Jazakallahu khairan. Really some eye-opening points made there, Brother Arshad, and it's really a delight always hearing you in the previous conferences and today. And yes, inshallah, I think it is time that the world wakes up and realizes the depth of the Kashmir issue. And as you said, it's not just the demographic changes that are taking place in Kashmir, which sometimes can be positive. What's happening in Kashmir is a genocidal threat. The Muslims of Kashmir are being exterminated, not just moved from one place to another, but completely killed. And this is something we need to make the world aware of, and its consequences, not just in Kashmir, but across the globe, when fascism cannot be controlled. I would like now to invite Abdul Basit Saab, who's a former ambassador of Pakistan. He has served as a former High Commissioner of Pakistan to India. He was appointed to this position in 2014 and was based in New Delhi. Previously, he also served as an ambassador to Germany, as well as to Moscow, New York, Sana'a, Geneva, and London. Ambassador Basit comes with a wealth of experience, analysis, and intellect, and inshallah, we're honored to have him on the panel to hear his views on the topic of the current topic that we're working on between the relations of India and Pakistan and the way forward. Ambassador Abdul Basit Saab.
Thank you very much, Mr. Qureshi, and thank you for having me. And my greetings to all worthy panelists. I would make a few very quick points. I fully understand, having associated with this dispute for many years, I have come to the conclusion that unless and until the Jammu and Kashmir dispute is resolved, there is simply no possibility of a viable peace between Pakistan and India. And if there is no peace between Pakistan and India, then obviously there is no possibility for any regional cooperation, regional interdependence, or regional connectivity. So even our regional development is kind of, hinges on resolving this long-standing dispute. My second point is that Pakistan should be wary of not being inveigled into another dialogue process, in my view. We have been talking to India for the last now more than 50 years after the Shimla Agreement in 1972. And we have seen that over the decades, Pakistan's position on Jammu and Kashmir has been weakened. From 2004 onwards, since President Musharraf and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh signed the 6th January 2004 joint statement, and then our president agreed to have a 4-point formula. Since then, if you look at different bilateral documents between Pakistan and India, Pakistan has conceded so much on Jammu and Kashmir that when we faced a situation on the 5th of August 2019, literally our government was groping for how to respond to this situation. Not that we did not know. I was, the High Commissioner of Pakistan since till August 2017, and I had been admonishing the government that this was going to happen sooner rather than later. But in any case, that is history. My point is that we should not be seeking dialogue with India at this point in time, because unless we have some assurance from India that it is willing to now resolve this dispute, my own experience and my assessment tells me that we would be again become a part of a long process which would achieve nothing. So it is important, in order for India to show its sincerity of purpose, to first release all the political prisoners, including the Hurriyat leadership, lift all the draconian laws from the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and then demilitarize the region. If India is ready to do, at least take these 3 steps, then we can at least make some guess that India is indeed willing to move ahead on Jammu and Kashmir. And then fourthly, if India is even willing to make Siachen a green or peace park, even that would give some signal that India is ready. At the moment, India again wants Pakistan to get engaged with it in a dialogue process. We would again get into a futile exercise of, preparing frameworks, which issue to be discussed where, as we did since 2004 under the framework of the composite dialogue. So in my view, we should not be a part of any such exercise again, because doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting different results, I do not know how we can explain to the people of Pakistan and to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So my submission to my own government would be that we should be very, very careful. Our every step should be very calculated, so that we are not again trapped into another long process of dialogue. I would fully endorse what Dr. Nazir Gilani said about Article 11 and Article 10. I have been saying these things as well along with Dr. Gilani, but unfortunately, the Azad Jammu and Kashmir government failed to perform its duties. On the other hand, I have also been suggesting to my own government that it is time to up the ante. We should immediately appoint a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, so that all the dimensions of the Kashmiri struggle could be coordinated and pursued. Kashmir struggle has both internal and external dimensions. As the previous speaker, Dr. Arshad, very rightly said, that it's a military occupation. So you have to deal with this nobody would give you freedom. India would not give you freedom on a platter. Kashmiris will have to fight for that. And international law is on their side. The international principle of erga omnes is on the side of Indians, on the Kashmiri side of Kashmiris. And then there is a resolution of United Nations General Assembly 3314 of I think 23rd December, 24th December of 1974, which clearly states that armed struggle against occupation is legitimate. So we need to, coordinate all these efforts, and that will not happen unless Pakistan ups the ante, appoints a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, and then the Jammu and Kashmir, Azad Jammu and Kashmir government makes the requisite changes in its interim constitution, also including Article 2, and acts, because Article 2, if that is amended, that should, the Azad Jammu and Kashmir should be also representing the people of the occupied Kashmir as well. In its present form, Article 2 is Azad Jammu and Kashmir represents only those territories which is under its control. So we need to, do many things. And there is diaspora. We need to organize them, mobilize their energies. So we have many assets which can be used in the service of the Kashmir cause. But unfortunately, we have not been able to put together our act together, unfortunately. So it is high time we should learn from our past mistakes. We should not allow our principle to stand on Jammu and Kashmir to be undermined in any way, and move very, very carefully. And I still believe, because the people of Jammu and Kashmir are ready to give more sacrifices. So we should not, at least, should not be, if we have invested so much, both Kashmiris and Pakistan, in this struggle, there is no point to feel dejected at this stage. We need to put our act together, and and I am confident we can do so many things still that we can put international pressure on India. But again, to conclude, my advice to my government would be: don't act in haste, be careful, because India is desperate to have talks with you, but this is not the time for dialogue. Thank you very much.
Jazakallahu khairan, Basit Sahab. Really nice to hear your words of wisdom there. And indeed, I think there are so many options we have available, and we need to start thinking outside the box on how we can bring a solution to the issue of Kashmir. Some of these points that you have highlighted, like the United Nations Resolution 314, is something that we should start exploring and see how we can actually utilize such resolutions to bring peace and prosperity, not just to the Valley of Kashmir or the Jammu and Kashmir territory, but whole of the Asian subcontinent. Thank you for your valuable time. I would now request Dr. Mubin Shah, who hails from the Indian occupied Kashmir. Dr. Mubin Shah is currently serving as the director of Kohimaran in Malaysia, but during his time, he held the post of a president of Jammu and Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he was also the president of Jammu and Kashmir Joint Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Mubin Shah was also imprisoned for his activities on the freedom movement in Kashmir, and his case was highlighted in the United Nations as well in a hearing. Could I request Dr. Mubin Shah now to open up his mic? Dr. Mubin Saab?
Yep. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Zafar Saab, for inviting me for this very important webinar, which is at the right time and, you know, because of the situation which is developing all around us. And, you know, the subject you have chosen, you know, is that unfreezing of a complicated issue. We have ourselves, unfortunately, made it complicated in the sense that our messaging, of this issue has been completely off the track. As rightly pointed out by the speakers before me, that right of self-determination. This is one message which we unfortunately have not been consistent with. You know, that is why we have been led to these talks which have gone round and round and round. I would like to mention a small episode which happened to me in New York. And, you know, Robert Kennedy's daughter, she met me in New York, and she was supposed to go to India. And she refused to go to Kashmir. We had gone to meet her because she had a human rights organization in New York. And she said that I will not come, I will not go to Kashmir, you know, because India will not feel good about it. And, you know, I told her that your family has a moral obligation because it is your uncle who put us into this dilemma, into this problem of talks and talks, which was done by John F. Kennedy by telling Ayub Khan in 1962 that the talks will solve, negotiations will solve, and which is still happening from 1962 right up to date. And as rightly pointed out by Basit Saab also, and others, that these type of talks, until unless they do not have the motive behind that what we want to demand from India. And this is where the right of self-determination should come as the main issue, nothing else. You see, before this also, I participated in some webinars where I pointed out that the biggest human right violation is the right of self-determination, which the Indian government is not giving us. So even our all human rights organizations which are fighting for human rights violations for, you know, against India have to put this at the top. That right of self-determination is the one thing which we have to be as a human rights violation also. And that is where our messaging will be consistent with everybody. Now, lately, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has been able to communicate to the Indian government regarding this resolution of Kashmir. And we need that, as Basit Saab has said, you have to up the ante. That is right of self-determination. That is the only point where every government official from Pakistan and every person who talks about Kashmir in Pakistan or with India has to tell this, that unless the process of implementation of right of self-determination is not declared, nothing else will move. Nothing else will move. And I'm sure the Pakistan people who are suffering because if no, for example, if some trade is going, I am basically a businessman. I would also love to have trade with India if I am a Pakistani. But this is more Kashmir is a more problematic for all the Kashmiris. Now genocide is there. There is a genocide. It is already it declared a genocide. And by the actions which they have done, India has done after August 5th. I am personally also a sufferer of that. And this is completely, it falls within the ambit of genocide. Now, what is the way forward? The way forward is number one, is that all the people, whether it is in the UN, whether it is our president of the Azad Jammu and Kashmir, they have to tell about only right of self-determination. No talks until unless the right of self-determination is given. And you see, we unfortunately have fallen in the, we are going to be unfortunately again falling into the Cold War situation. The present situation in the world is going to that respect. And we know that in 1957, 1962, 1971, the Soviet Union vetoed our resolutions in the UN. And now the irony will be that because of the strategic requirement of United States, they may veto our issue in the UN. So what should we do as a body, as a people, as whatever in the non-resident Kashmiris and all, which I have told before also, that there is a need that we have to communicate to the people, whether in Europe, whether in the US, whether in the Middle East, and that can be communicated, the same message can be communicated through various means. Number one is, for example, we must have international icons. You know, we have recently seen what Rihanna did with a small tweet when there was a protest in India. So we have to have that. We have to have Kashmir BDS movement. We have to approach the International Court of Justice and International Criminal Court. And for this, I think the most important person, Nazir Saab, is there, who can advise the government of Pakistan or our government of AJK to do this. And you see, when these things will happen, because it has to become a people's movement. It has to become a people's movement, not only in Kashmir, it has to become a people's movement in Europe, in Middle East and all these countries. So that, you see, we have already resolutions in the OIC. Nobody is implementing it because there is no pressure from the public. There's no pressure from the public to do it. So this is my point. So this is where I fear that if we are not successful in all this, then the only option is what Dr. Arshad Mohsin has told about the recent Azerbaijan thing. That is the only option there for the decision makers in India, in Pakistan, because that is the only option. Because I fear there will be Kashmir, but without Kashmiris. This is what I fear today. The situation is in Kashmir. This is my feeling from the ground, what I hear from people in Kashmir. Thank you very much. This is what I wanted to make it short and precise. That is it.
Jazakallahu khairan, Mubin Saab, really short and precise indeed, but to the point, and very valuable suggestions there. Jazakallahu khairan, and inshallah, I hope we continue to have your support with inshallah ensuring that how we can move this forward. I will now request Brother Ashfaq Lonsa, who is also from Indian-occupied Kashmir and has been working tirelessly for the cause of Kashmir, both inside while he was in Kashmir and now in the United Kingdom. Brother Ashfaq Said Known, is a PhD from Sheffield University and also works with Kashmir Campaign Global to highlight the plight of Kashmir across different domains, including public awareness, as well as political and humanitarian crisis. Dr. Ishfaq Loan Saab, can I ask you to turn your video on, please?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, already done that. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. All the participants, salam to Faiz Saab, Azad Saab.
You are muted, Ashfaq Saab, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
If you can already hear me, yeah. So the topic that was chosen for this webinar was the India-Pakistan, the Thaw in the relationships, and where does Kashmir stand in that. And looking at the past history, as Ambassador Bassett said earlier, about 50 years of negotiations, and we are where we are in 2021. Rounds and rounds of negotiations, and that's where we at the moment. And the ground situation in Kashmir, as you all know, we have heard from different participants who are originally from the occupied side in the Kashmir, right, or Jammu and Kashmir. The situation is dire. Right from August 2019. We can see that the economy has been crushed, and thousands of people have lost jobs. Thousands were incarcerated, and even now there are even maybe more than 1,000 still incarcerated in different parts of jails in India. And about the change in demography that's been talked about by different speakers, nearly 2.7 million people from different parts of India have been given the state subject to be inside, to live inside Jammu and Kashmir. So that changes a lot. If you look back where we were in the last census, about 65% of the total population of Jammu and Kashmir are Muslims. We are predominantly nearly 99% in Valley. And then apart from Udhampur, Kutwa, and the Jammu district, the main districts, these three districts are predominantly Hindu. And the rest, Rajouri, is about 50-50, and Poonch, nearly about 80% Muslims plus. And apart from the Ladakh, where we got about 50-50 with the Muslims and non-Muslims. So it changes, if you look at those 2.7 million people, so it changes a lot. They already did it in 1947. We all know what happened during the Jammu massacre. Nearly 250,000 Muslims were killed or driven away from Jammu to Sialkot or other parts of Pakistan at the time. So the demographic change is a part and parcel of RSS. So it's an agenda not only for Kashmir, it's their big project. And they're taking the leave from Mein Kampf, Hitler's Mein Kampf, and the Heidegger and the Gowalkar. They were the architects of RSS right back in 1920s, 1923, 24, and it was in form of genocide. And things haven't changed because if you look at Premnath Bazad's book on Kashmir, in the early 50s, he said what genocide is doing now, Congress will do it later. So there's no difference really in the mindset of the ruling class of the Indian government, which has been to get back to that Akhand Bharat. The Akhand Bharat is the focus. And they go back to the Samudragupta Mauryas and the Mauryas dynasty, where they think the Hindu empire was at its peak. And in that, there's no room for Pakistan, there's no room for Afghanistan, there's no Nepal, there's no Burma, and there's no other other states around it. So the Akhand Bharat is an agenda, as is the greater Islam, for this Israel. So there's a lot of constellation between these two, unfortunately, which have a great geopolitical influence on where we stand. So at the present moment, we need to see what can be done. Living in the diaspora, how they need to organize themselves, and we've got people, we've got the potential, we've got the human resources as well as the material resources for that to do. But the thing is, we need to get united. We need to keep the egos that come into account at most of the times on the side, and then move forward cohesively with one agenda. And the agenda is to get back the right of self-determination for the people of J&K. And it's not the easy path. It is going to take time. It's been 73 years, but in the history of the nation, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years isn't much. Isn't much time. But the thing is, there can be fatigue, because people are still suffering. Every day you see 2, 3, 4, 5 youths are giving their lives away, and it's quite a high cost to pay. We know about the conditions of Pakistan at the moment. Also, the economy is vulnerable, and they can be under pressure. FATF and all those factors do play and do have the influence in there, and the instability in the political governance, whatever is happening inside Pakistan. But those are the things they need to resolve, because the stronger the Pakistan is, the greater guarantee for Kashmir to be have a brighter future. Not only Kashmir, but the Muslims living in the subcontinent. They will be looking for a future as Pakistan gets stronger. So that's very important to know, that the stronger Pakistan is very, very important for us. And then looking at sometimes China comes into play, so we feel the Kashmir is like something is going to happen, but we have to understand that all the nations have got their own vested interests, all national interests. So China it played its game, it got what it wanted, and she's happy with that. So, but we have to look, Kashmiris globally living inside, in the occupied Kashmir, outside in Azad Kashmir, and the diaspora. So how can we move forward and build our institutions and look for a long-drawn struggle like the Palestinians are doing without the support? Palestinians are hardly, you can look at the Palestinians, hardly there's any support, visible support to the Palestinians, but they're carrying their struggle on. So I think the Kashmiris will also have to carry on the struggle on, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبَّنَا اللَّهَ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمْ مَلَائِكَةٌ لَا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. So that's what is the what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, and that the best things to the istiqamah, to be steadfastness, to realize that we are on the truth, and what we're seeking is not something which is unfair. We're for fair and justice. We want the peace in the subcontinent. We want the 1.5 billion people in the subcontinent to live peacefully. We don't want there be chaos, the chaos over there. And we don't want the 20-30% of people who are living under the poverty line at the moment. We want them also to be marginally raised, and the basic needs of their everyday life they should also attain. But that can't go. That will only go through Srinagar, right? When we remember when Richard Holbrooke was sent to Afghanistan in 2008, he said the peace in Afghanistan lies through Srinagar. So we'll also say that if the peace and tranquility of the South Asia has to lie through Srinagar, inshallah. So let's all pray and be firm and strategize and be clear in vision and be united. And inshallah, it may take time, it may take some more generations, but we'll be focused, and inshallah one day we're going to achieve what we're seeking for. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك التواب الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallahu khairan, Dr. Ishaq. Words of wisdom always there, alhamdulillah. You know, as I said, we need to keep on our struggle and we need to keep moving forward. We need to build our resources. We need to build our strategy. It is not an overnight struggle. It has been going on for 73 years, and it may take some more time, but inshallah, the people of Kashmir are determined to carry this struggle on. I'm now going to request our next speaker, Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, who needs no introduction. Alhamdulillah, I believe most of, all of the panelists are aware of Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai and his sacrifices. But for the benefit of our viewers on Facebook and other social platforms, Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai was born in the village of Wadwan, Badgam in Indian-occupied Kashmir. He spent his life for the cause of Kashmir, representing the aspirations of people of occupied land for a peaceful settlement to the long outstanding issue of Kashmir on all local, national, and international platforms, including think tanks, United Nations, OIC, and other political powerhouses. His work for the cause of Kashmir is well known, not just in the Asian community, but across all the communities, irrespective of their caste, creed, or ideology, or religion. He is currently serving as the chairman of World Kashmir Awareness, a US NGO-based NGO that works to highlight the aspirations of the people of Kashmir in a peaceful manner. Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai, could I welcome you to present your views on our topic today?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, let me thank you, Zafar Ahmad Saab, for inviting truly the galaxy of speakers, President Masood Khan Saab, Dr. Gilani, Dr. Mubin Shah, Dr. Ashfaq, and very respected and mentor, Professor Khurshid Ahmad, Ambassador Abdul Basid, Ambassador Munir. And let me tell you, really, I was delighted to listen to Dr. Arshad Mohsin. So you really made my day. May Allah bless you. The topic, India-Pakistan relations and the way forward, is a very, very important topic. But before expounding on the subject, if you allow me to say just a few words about the ceasefire reached between India and Pakistan on February 26, 2021. I am sure that you saw that agreement. Dr. Gilani has mentioned that in one of his pieces. There's a very catchphrase in that agreement, which was agreed by both India and Pakistan, that each side agreed to address each other's core issue. So ladies and gentlemen, the question arises, how can we define that core issue? Don't be excited. This core issue may mean totally different to India than it means to you and me. I will give you just a few examples. The mentor of Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he visited Lahore and in fact the Minar-e Pakistan, there was a lot of joy on the streets of Lahore, and genuinely so. But more importantly, also on the streets of Kashmir. I do not know if you remember what he said there. He said the conflict between India and Pakistan was fundamentally over the issue of Kashmir. The Prime Minister of India, and saying that in a very important location of Pakistan, Minar-e Pakistan. The people of Pakistan, people of Kashmir, they welcome it. But ladies and gentlemen, I do not know if you remember, when he landed in New Delhi, he was asked, what do you agree to talk about Kashmir with Pakistan? This is exactly the wording of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He said, we truly believe Azad Kashmir. He did not say Azad Kashmir. He said, we truly believe Pakistan occupied Kashmir is still a disputed territory. Ambassador Abdul Basid mentioned about meeting between Dr. Manmohan Singh and President Musharraf. But there was a joint communique which was signed by both head of the government and head of the state of Pakistan. On September 24, 2004, joint communique signed by Dr. Manmohan Singh and President Musharraf. We will explore all the possible options to resolve the issue of Kashmir. Not only Kashmir American, not only the British American, the people of Kashmir, they really welcome it. And we could not believe our eyes and ears. When 3 weeks later, Dr. Manmohan Singh said, exact wording, we cannot redraw our borders to find the solution of Kashmir. What happened very recently when Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan Saab, met with President of America, President Donald Trump, where Donald Trump offered his offices of mediation to help resolve that hot tinderbox of Kashmir. We knew that it's a very important statement, whether Donald Trump was going to do it or not. But the immediate response from India was given by a person no less important than Jai Shankar, the Foreign Minister of India, to be exact, on July 22nd, 2019. He said, India and Pakistan, they are committed. These are the words of the Foreign Minister of India, soon after Donald Trump offered the office of mediation. India and Pakistan are committed to find the resolution of Jammu and Kashmir under similar agreement. July 22nd, 2019. Then on August 14, 2019, less than a month ago, he had a meeting with his counterpart in Beijing, the Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi. Just in a month, ladies and gentlemen. And he said, Kashmir remains the integral part of India. Yes, the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, it's a very good step. Not a single soul on the streets of Kashmir is going to object it, because on either side of the ceasefire line, we are being killed, the people of Kashmir. Yes, the exchange of greetings between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Imran Khan, it's a good step. But the question arises, is this ceasefire agreement going to open the doors of understanding? Is these greetings which were exchanged between the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan, are they going to open the doors of mutual harmony? Only time will tell. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what needs to be done? I was reading one of the pieces of Dr. Gilani, he has mentioned it there. Ladies and gentlemen, wallahi, it is not an emotional statement what I am making. It's a factual statement that Musharraf formula is not an option. Musharraf formula has been rejected by the people of Kashmir. The government of Pakistan gave one of the highest awards to one of the most respected leaders of Kashmir, Sayyid Ali Gilani. And thanks to President of Azad Kashmir, he played a very important role in that. That Sayyid Ali Gilani has rejected it, not because I am saying so, because the person who initiated that formula, he wrote in the book, President Musharraf, Sayyid Ali Gilani did not endorse my formula. Ladies and gentlemen, what is Musharraf formula? No matter how you say it, I can say it in a very political language. President Massoud can say it in a very diplomatic language. Dr. Gilani can say it in a very legal language. But the bottom line is, Musharraf formula means the conversion of line of control into international border. No ifs, no buts. When you are really talking about the conversion of line of control into international border, it's an insult to the intelligence of the people of Kashmir. Those people who advise the Prime Minister of Pakistan, again, not an emotional statement, it's a factual statement. Those people who advise the Prime Minister of Pakistan on Kashmir policy, they need to understand. When you are talking about conversion of line of control into international border, they cynically mock the suffering of the people of Kashmir. The people of Kashmir, they have revolted against status quo. And status quo cannot be an option. I have few points, the way forward. Number one, I can understand the sentiments of our brother Arshad Mohsin. But Kashmir issue cannot be and must not be resolved through military means. Dr. Gilani gave the genesis of Kashmir issue from the United Nations. It's a political issue. It has been resolved through political means. For that, there is a one basic fundamental condition. There must be ceasefire. President Masood Khan Sahib, please convey it to the government of Pakistan. The ceasefire cannot be only on the line of control. The ceasefire has to be on the ground in the valley of Kashmir. You cannot have a ceasefire agreement on the line of control. When 900,000 Indian army, they are killing the innocent civilians on the streets of Srinagar. So the ceasefire agreement and the killings of the innocent people, they cannot go together. And secondly, I'm talking about the parameters. The bilateral talks, India and Pakistan have failed. I don't need to go into details. Tashkent, Simla, Lahore. You know why? Because we were not there. India and Pakistan, they sought to bypass the people of Kashmir. Dr. Gilani, sorry to mention him again and again, he wrote in one of his articles, Kashmiris are not third party. Kashmiris are the principal party and the primary party. When Abdullah and Indira and Abdullah and Nehru, they had the accord, it also failed because they sought to bypass Pakistan. Between India and Kashmir, Pakistan was not there. Between Pakistani and Indians, Kashmiri was not there. So the principal party are the people of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, not the Muslims of Kashmir. The state of the people of state of Jammu and Kashmir, whether they are Hindus or Muslims, Gilgit-Baltistan. Gilgit-Baltistan, my dear brothers and sisters, please, for God's sake, keep it as it is, the part of state of Jammu and Kashmir. So they are the ones who should be the part of this process. James Woolsey, I do not know why we have to quote really foreigners. We understand it. But James Woolsey was the chief of CIA. He did not say something which we do not know, but because he is, chief of CIA, I have to quote him. He said both India and Pakistan, they do not trust each other. And you know it, Arshad Sahab, and I know it. Why it is important? It is important because whenever there is going to be a negotiations or the talks between India and Pakistan, there must be the third party facilitation. It does not need to be mediation, third party facilitation. This mediation does not need to be United Nations. This mediation does not need to be United States of America. It could be a person of international standing. We have former Prime Minister of Bandhavik. He visited Azad Kashmir. He met with Dr. Gilani in Geneva. He met with the President Masood Khan Sahib in Azad Kashmir. By the way, he is the first international dignitary who was allowed by government of India to visit Kashmir and meet with Sayyid Ali Gilani and Muhammad Yasin Malik and Mirwaz Umar Farooq. Muhammad Yasin Malik could not make it because he was in the jail that time. He could be the person. Mary Robinson could be a person, or there could be some other person. But my point is, there has to be a third party mediation. And fourth point, we should not promote nor rule out any possible option for this solution of Kashmir. Not promote, not rule out. And thirdly, there should not be any condition except the commitment to the negotiations. Zafar Saab is looking at me, and it is my final point. Kashmiris are intelligent people. You have heard the name of Akbar. He was Akbar because of the advisors, they were Kashmir. Iran brought the revolution because his grandmom was from Gilgit-Baltistan. I do not need to say it, but I can say it because he is a very important person, although, he is very controversial. Salman Rushdie. He wrote 2 articles in New York Times, 2 articles, opinion editorial in New York Times. And one of the opinion editorial of Salman Khurshid in New York Times begins. The reason I am saying it because I am a half Kashmiri. So what I am saying that people of Kashmir understand when there are going to be negotiations, we had to make some sacrifices. We understand that. But the world powers need to understand that there are other two parties also there. Every party has to make the sacrifice. Every party has to modify the stand. Everybody has to show the flexibility. Then alone we can reach the settlement, not only the people of Kashmir. And in conclusion, world powers need to understand. When Kashmir issue is going to be resolved, it is definitely going to bring peace to 23.5 million, Arshad Bhai, 23.5 million are the people of Kashmir today, including 2.5 million, as Dr. Gilani said, refugees. It is going to bring peace to Kashmir. But more importantly, it is going to bring peace and prosperity and tranquility to 1.5 billion people of South Asia, which is 1/5 of total race, total human race. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Zafar Saab, you are muted.
Jazakallahu khairan, Dr. Saab. Thank you very much for those words of wisdom. And as always, it's a pleasure and honor hearing you and your views and inshallah the way forward. Before our Q&A, which is inshallah after the last segment, I would like to call our esteemed guest, His Excellency President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, President Masood Khan Saab. And as I said, President Masood Khan Saab needs no introduction again, a very well-known personality, not just after his presidency, but well way before that. His Excellency has been forefronting the issue of Kashmir at every level. And as I said, not just since his presidency, but well before. His career spans and shines across multiple domains. Masood Khan Saab was born in Rawalkot, Punch, and studied there. He has worked with the United Nations in New York and Geneva and other multilateral forums for more than 20 years. He became the president of the United Nations Security Council in January 2013. He was the chairman of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Geneva, where he also represented as the chairman of the group of 77 in China and 131 developing countries in various international organizations. I personally have had the honor and the pleasure of hearing him and being with the President Saab for many, many years now. And I clearly remember when he came here, when we met first time with President Masood Saab, I was speaking to our Qaid, Sayyid Ali Gilani Saab, and I informed him that President Masood Saab was coming to United Kingdom and if he had a message. And the only message that the Gilani Saab gave was, just let President Saab know, while he is obviously the president of Azad Kashmir, he must not forget the people of Kashmir who are on the ground under the illegal Indian occupation. Let him not forget the duties towards those people that he cannot reach. It is his foremost important duty to make sure that he represents the aspirations of the people of Indian occupied Kashmir at every platform. I would now welcome President Masood Khan Saab to the stage to give us his view on the current topic. President Saab. We can't hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Mr. Zafar Qureshi, it's a pleasure to see you across the screen today, and I congratulate you for organizing the seminar. And this is a very effective platform that you created, Kashmir Campaign Global, and the topic we have chosen is timely, and therefore it needed to be discussed, and we're discussing it today. I want to pay my compliments to all the speakers who have preceded me. I did not speak in the beginning because I wanted to hear everything out and then make my comments. So, I know that all the speakers today have been outstanding in their articulation of the Kashmir cause and what we need to be doing in the coming days and months and years, as a matter of fact. So I have collected a lot of wise advice. But let me tell you that I have had this privilege of listening to Mr. Arshad Mohsen for the first time, and I was really touched and impressed because he analyzed the situation objectively from the point of view of the sufferers, as well, and how the sufferers, the people who are being victimized, look at the situation. So I was really moved by his presentation. Let me also tell you that right in the beginning, I want to thank the leadership of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan, for their continuous support to the people of Pakistan. Despite many challenges, we're beholden to them, and therefore we monitor their statements very closely when it comes to their relationship with India and their relationship with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Let me tell you that the ceasefire agreement that was that came into effect after the reinstatement of the 2003 arraignment, this triggered some speculation about the next steps, and there have been many pieces which have been written in mainstream international and national media. But let me reduce it to 3 points. One is that, once again, it has been recognized that the Jammu and Kashmir issue is the central issue between India and Pakistan. Second is that the ceasefire is confined to the line of control. And it's a good thing that this ceasefire has been agreed to, because people on this side of the line of control in the South Kashmir were losing lives. And on that side, of course, I mean, when our armed forces engage, they do not engage civilians on the other side. They engage or target the military posts there. But still, I think that this provides relief to both sides, because lately, Indian soldiers, occupation soldiers, as a matter of fact, have started taking refuge in villages and using villages and villages as human shield. So I think that this would reduce the plight of the people living along the line of control. On the Azad Kashmir side, there are some 80,000 households or some 640,000 residents who would have this relief. Now, let me come to the topic. It's a good topic, but there are a few things that I want to highlight. One is that I would never use win-win solution in regard to the Kashmir issue. There's absolutely no win for New Delhi. I'll explain why. Because they occupied the territory, one chunk of the territory, in 1947. And they have been brutalizing the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that part of Jammu and Kashmir, for the past 73 years. What kind of a win do they expect? And are we equating the occupier and the occupied, the victimizer and the victims? So the only relief that they can get is that they can be given an honorable exit from the occupied territory. And what is their residual concern? Their residual concern would be the welfare or protection of the rights of Hindus. And we can guarantee that, as the states of Pakistan and India did in 1947. What locus standi India has to demand a win-win situation, a win-win formula. We would all win if India vacates its illegal aggression from the occupied territory and temporarily hand over the territory to the United Nations under UNSIP resolutions for holding of a plebiscite. And there the decision would be given by the people of Jammu and Kashmir. As Dr. Thaw pointed out very aptly, that when we talk about the ceasefire, it should not be partial. The real pressing, compelling ceasefire that we need is in the valley of Kashmir, where people are being killed and maimed and tortured and incarcerated. That's where ceasefire should take place. That can be confidence building measure number one. The second thing I want to say respectfully, don't call the Kashmir situation an imbroglio. It is not an imbroglio. For God's sake, it's a humanitarian catastrophe of historic proportions. Nothing in the 21st century or even the latter half of the 20th century has happened compared to what is happening in Kashmir. This is an international outrage. And the outrage becomes even more serious because the international community is not taking cognizance of that situation. It turns a blind eye, mesmerized by the so-called a brutal extremist, violent extremist nation, not entire nation, but the BJP RSS nexus. There has been no thaw between India and Pakistan. I mean, all that has happened is that the two sides agreed to reinstate their 2003 ceasefire agreement along the line of control. Is that a thaw? People have started talking about a rapprochement, jumping the gun. And can you remove Kashmir from the table to promote such kind of rapprochement? I don't think so. So let me also, two questions have been addressed, as a matter of fact, pointedly, towards the President of Azad Kashmir and the state of Azad Kashmir. Let me point out that when, I have had dialogue with Dr. Gilani in the past, and I think that we can continue this discussion. There was this sinister move in the recent past, which was saying that to appoint a plebiscite administrator in accordance with Article 11 of the interim constitution of Azad Kashmir, and then hold a partial plebiscite. But this plebiscite has to be in accordance with UNCIP resolutions. And in fact, a partial plebiscite would divide Kashmir. And we can continue to have this discussion because there is no mandate from the United Nations or UNCIP resolutions to hold a plebiscite only on the Azad Kashmir side of the And there was some enthusiasm supporting this line of action because that would have translated into what you would call the state forever. And Kashmir would have been divided forever. So, but we can still debate this point. There was a point raised about Article 2 of the Constitution, and I would say that Article 2 of the Constitution about the territoriality of the state of Azad Kashmir should be read with the preamble of paragraph 4 of the interim constitution 1974 and the declaration of the Azad Jammu and Kashmir state when it was released and issued on October the 24th, 1947. At that time, the people of Azad Jammu and Kashmir vowed that they would constitute a government in the Azad territory, the liberated territory, but it would be a base camp for the liberation and freedom of the entire state. And that is conventional wisdom and largely accepted notion for the very existence of the state of Azad. The full title is Azad Government of the State of Jammu and Kashmir. It's not the full state that we're talking about, or just Azad Kashmir. Now, if there are some overtures being made by India, we should try to read their lips or try to decipher and deconstruct their motives and intentions. And I would say, when they talk about no violence and extremism, what they want to say is that it is Pakistan which has to pay penance and not the Indians. That in fact, they are the victims, or they are the party which is being targeted, which is not true. It's an untruth, a falsehood that has been propagated by Indians over and over again. What is happening is that these Hindutva squads are killing Kashmiris, and they are in fact changing the very nature of that state. So the extremists that they talk about, I mean, they should do this penance themselves, because they were the ones who are practicing violent extremism, not only in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir in its worst form, but in all parts of India. So why are they sermonizing to us? Let me tell you that I sometimes feel that our campaigners, our analysts are behind the curve, because they do not take full cognizance of the developments, these dire developments that have taken place since August the 5th, 2019. People talk in future tense or in passive voice. What has happened over the past hundreds of days is that the demography has been changed. People are saying that the demography is being changed. It has been changed. According to the junior Interior Minister of India, between the months of April and December last year, 3.2 million people were given domicile certification, and they belong to different parts of India. And let me also tell you that these people now have a claim to the jobs that are reserved for the Kashmiris. They are grabbing their land to establish colonies. They are depriving Kashmiris of their businesses. They are making all Kashmiri businesses unlawful. So, and on top of that, there is this siege, this asphyxiating siege of the territory of Jammu and Kashmir since August 5th, 2019. And there are killings, and there's cultural invasion of the territory. Women are being harassed and prosecuted and molested and raped. Now, as pointed out by Mr. Arshid Musa and many other speakers as well, right, that these are crimes against humanity. This is genocide. These are war crimes, and there is applicable law in international body of laws, which prohibits such acts and makes them punishable. Now it is time, it's high time that the international criminal justice machinery kicked in and stopped this catastrophe, humanitarian and human rights catastrophe, and these war crimes. I can cite convention after convention to substantiate my point. Another point that I want to make is that when we talk about the way forward, we start talking formulae, like the Musharraf formula, like the Andorra solution, like the Good Friday Agreement. For God's sake, the situation is completely different. Every issue has its own dynamics. But the point which has been made very forcefully by many speakers and very strongly and articulately by Dr. Fire himself, which was echoed by many speakers, for God's sake, include Kashmiris in that process. One of the reasons the Kashmir issue has not been resolved up to this day is because they have not been included or incorporated in negotiations in direct or indirect form. I mean, to their credit, Kashmiris have endorsed the UN resolutions across the spectrum, whether it is Hurriyat leaders or even its components like JKLF, they have endorsed the UN Security Council resolutions. But in bilateral processes, Kashmiris have never been included. Now, I have emphasized this point. It needs to be understood by the international community and Kashmiris themselves that Kashmiris or people of Kashmir are not, or the territory of Kashmir are not chattels which can be negotiated away in a diplomatic space between the two countries. And the government of Pakistan, or the state of Pakistan's official stated policy is that there are three parties to the dispute: Pakistan, India, and the people of Jammu. And I add another party, which is the United Nations, which was the guarantor and custodian of its own resolutions and the expected implementer of these resolutions. The fourth party, the international party. So let me tell you that what are the reasons behind India's overtures. One is, of course, endorsement, and they're seeking endorsement / indemnity of their illegal actions in India, in the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. You know, when Pakistan and India would meet and there would be photo opportunity, at that time, India would have achieved half its objective. Because as Ambassador Abdul Basit was mentioning, that these processes for bilateral negotiations, even agenda setting, they take a lot of time. And India scuttles the importance of Kashmir in these negotiations, including in the agenda setting. And therefore, they would just try to dilute attention to Kashmir. So first is endorsement and indemnity for the illegal actions by involving Pakistan. Second is divert attention from its internal problems, which have been alluded to. And then the third is, in fact, since there's a new administration, the Biden administration, we want to bring India's clout in Washington to bear on Pakistan, so that Pakistan is also seeking good relations with the United States. It's trying to balance its relationship with China and the United States of America. So the Indian-American community is quite strong in Washington, D.C., all around the United States. So they are evolving and developing this agenda. And what they want to do is to go back to the early 2000s. And I can tell you, after the killings and blindings and these sacrifices of the people of Jammu and Kashmir over the past decades, we cannot turn the wheel of history. We've gone past that stage of confidence with the measures which were elaborated in the aftermath of this meeting between Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Musharraf. Kashmiris will have to be liberated. So I would say Kashmiris, some 20 million people, and add to that the diaspora community all around the world, they should not toe the lines. They should have their own solutions, and they should put those solutions on the table. It's a freedom movement, for God's sake. It is not just a diplomatic movement, and freedom movements are political movements. And freedom movements surrender no right until they achieve their objective. Let me tell you that people forbid and proscribe the use of force, but only for the weaker. I mean, all supply chains for the people of Jammu and Kashmir have been cut off. And India would not talk to them. Official India, sitting in Delhi, would not talk to them. I would not let the international community talk to them or observe what is happening in the besieged territory of Jammu and Kashmir. By the United States, we declared the Taliban as terrorists, as enemy. They sat across the table and heard out what the Taliban had to say. They were part of the trilateral negotiations, and they're being received in Moscow and Doha and other places. The very Taliban who were considered pariah or international rogues Kashmiris have committed no such crime. Why can't they be included in the report? So I would say that Kashmir movement has its own dynamic, even indirect, subtle. Don't count out in New Delhi's or Washington's feelings or their policy lines or narratives. You have your own narrative to put across. As a matter of fact, although we've been trying our best, I mean, the people of Azad Kashmir, Pakistan, the diaspora community, the spokesman from the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and diaspora community, very talented diaspora Kashmiri community coming from the valley in the United States and in Canada and all over the world. They've been trying to make the world aware of the Armageddon that is unfolding in the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Well, let me tell you that the tragedy is that the story is not yet out. The world doesn't know the kind of heinous crimes against humanity that are being committed in the besieged territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Although it is being chronicled by the brave, valiant Kashmiri historians and human rights defenders under such constraints, I would say in the past 2 years, nearly 2 years, in the aftermath of the martyrdom of Burhan Wani, and particularly in the aftermath, August the 5th, 2019, you Kashmiris and the people of Pakistan and diaspora community, they have created new international space for Kashmir. My appeal to you is, don't surrender it, because bilateralism is not going to work, as it was pointed out by many speakers. It's a hoax, it's a mirage. It's like chasing a will-o'-the-wisp. It is used as a stratagem by India to consolidate its occupation of the territory, seek legitimization, indirect legitimization from Pakistan, and perpetually postpone the addressing of the real question, the resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute or issue in accordance with the wishes and aspirations of the pivotal constituencies of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So let me also say, I have told it to the people of Pakistan and the leadership of Pakistan, that any capitulation on Kashmir, diplomatic or political, would weaken and enfeeble Pakistan, because Pakistan's state itself has been threatened by the Hindutva extremes, the ideologues of Hindutva. So therefore, it is political and historical responsibility of Pakistan to continue to work for the people of Jammu and Kashmir in the international space, in the international or multilateral space. Dr. Pai referred to third-party mediation. Now that this issue has been internationalized, don't surrender the legal base that you have in the United Nations. Don't give up the option of third party. We had engaged, I don't want to divulge all the details, but we had engaged informally behind the scenes many facilitators from Africa and from Nordic countries and from the United Kingdom and possibly from the United States. We will continue to go down that path. My final thoughts are that Kashmiris continue to give their blood for their freedom, liberty, and also for the state of Pakistan. And therefore, there is reciprocal responsibility as well as the people and state of Pakistan are concerned. I have this confidence and all the governments in Pakistan would remain faithful to their fellow citizens, Kashmiris. And they would, in fact, stand by that vow which was made back in 1947. Second, don't give up your right to self-defense, which is guaranteed by the United Nations Charter in its Article 51. It has been given, in fact, to all nations and all peoples, in all situations. Don't give it up. It is our struggle. It is the struggle of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We will one day. We will win one day. And we have been fighting for the past 200 years. And we haven't tired out. And there is no fatigue as far as the Kashmiri boys are concerned. Without arms. And the entire Kashmiri population, the citizens of the Union, there's no fatigue there. There should not be any fatigue anywhere else in the world. Azad Kashmir, Pakistan, that's what I believe. Freedom-loving people all over the world. Soon, I can assure you that the history will be on our side. Don't lose heart. Don't listen to naysayers and skeptics who exaggerate the might and omnipotence of India in political, economic, and strategic realms. We will not be intimidated. We will not be vigilant. And I say once again that Pakistan is a great nation, and we thank its government and its people for the constant support that they have extended to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and this is what they ought to have done, and their strong solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Let's forge unity, and let's not give up the international space that we have gained over the years with sheer determination and hard work. The Kashmir issue has gone back to the multilateral fora and to the world parliaments, the European Parliament, to the US Congress, to the UK Parliament, to the French Parliament, to the ASEAN parliaments. Don't bring it back to Delhi and Islamabad. Don't surrender the space that you have created. Thank you so much.
Jazakallahu khairan, President Masood Saab. Really hard work. Finally, this was President Masood Saab was our last speaker on the panel today. On the behalf of Kashmir Campaign Global, an NGO based and registered in the United Kingdom, and from the people of Kashmir, I want to thank all our esteemed panelists, our esteemed guest, Professor Farshid Saab, Dr. Rishad Mohsin Saab, Ishfaq Hussain Saab, Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai Saab, Mubin Shah Sahab, Nazir Gilani Sahab, and Ambassador Basit Saab, and Ambassador Munir Akram Saab, President Azad Kashmir Sahab. Before our concluding, I just want to sort of summarize on what we have discussed today and where as a Kashmir Campaign Global, what we stand for. The issue of Kashmir, which everybody has iterated in a very eloquent manner, is not an issue of a bilateral issue, but an international issue. Our struggle is not for the restoration of Article 370 or 35A or normalization in human rights violations under the Indian Constitution. But our struggle, which has been continuing since 1947, if least marked from the independence of India and Pakistan, has always been freedom from the illegal Indian occupation. The people of Kashmir have kept this fire of freedom going for the last 73 years with whatever means we can. And inshallah, President Saab, as he said, we will not give up. As Dr. Faisab said, we must focus on a complete solution, especially in a peaceful manner, as agreed in the United Nations resolution of 1948 between India, Pakistan, and the international community. Our struggle isn't for the division of Kashmir at any cost. What we want is a peaceful solution for the whole of Valley, for the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. That includes all its parties. And that can only be possible when we are united, especially Pakistan, who has shouldered a great responsibility at every level. The people of Pakistan had given us their support on every platforms. But what we want to see is a consistent policy that ensures that the ultimate goalpost is not changed from one place to another, but a clarity that says that the people of Kashmir are fighting for the right of self-determination and not for anything less than that. And that goalpost will not change. As Professor Khurshid Saab said, we need to start utilizing every platform possible, especially the international audience that we have recently been targeting. We need to involve the main policymakers and shakers of the world. We need to reach out to the corners, those people who actually matter. And this issue must not be sent to the bilateral means, but has to be ensured that it remains on the international platform. And we put as much pressure as possible on the Indian government to restore and ensure that the right of self-determination of people of Kashmir. But at the same time, we cannot forget, and we must not forget, that freedom is not given just by pieces of paper or negotiations. We must be ready to do whatever it takes to get that freedom. As President Saab said, today, Afghanistan is in a negotiation position where it is demanding. And to reach that position, sacrifices needed to be made. And we, the people of Kashmir, have been giving those sacrifices for the last 73 years. What we ask from the international community, from our friends and neighbors, Pakistan, is to realize that whatever effort is required must be given. The issue of Kashmir is not just for the Kashmiris alone, but it is Pakistan's issue as well. And that ownership needs to be taken. Once again, I really want to thank you, everybody, for the panelists. I want to thank the audience on our social media, and most important, the TV channels, Kashmir News, who've been broadcasting this across. And inshallah ta'ala, we will be summarizing this into a booklet and we will be sending out. Once again, thank you very much, everyone.
Zafar, could you just, for a second, I would beg your attention. President Saab has said something about partial plebiscite under Section 11, or there was a sinister move. I think that is the problem, that these things will reoccur in the future as well. Section 11 is not for any such restrained or contained exercise. In addition, the president of Azad Kashmir and we shall be having even much more problems. I would like to bring it to the attention of Dr. Faisal as well. The new assembly in Azad Kashmir would be, it does not have any now qualification bars. You don't need to be a person who has gone to school. First, there was an education limit. You needed to be a matriculate to file your nomination. So when your lawmakers in future would be those who have never gone to school, though they may be wise people, but it is very difficult to understand the mechanism of the UN on Kashmir. And I would disagree respectfully. We have ourselves surrendered the UN template, which is an international platform for us. We haven't gone for bilateral. It is India and Pakistan that has decided to go bilateral. We were kept away from United Nations Security Council for 32 years, from November 65 to September 1996. So with that, I would conclude that we need to sit together because we have been speaking for the last many, many years, and from 47, 48, but we have to admit that we have not been fair to the title of the people of Kashmir to self-determination. And I would pick up from where Dr. Faiz said, or left, India and Pakistan's claims are a consequence of right of self-determination. We have a title. So if people like you and Faisal and others, we sit together and we negotiate and at least weed out these suspicions that there was a move to have a partial plebiscite. That's what is happening and would happen. Fortunately, since you are there, a careful person who has been carefully handling Kashmir. But still, I think we need to make sure, as Dr. Fai left at that the people of the state of Jammu and Kashmir have been defined by the United Nations as people of legend. So we are not ordinary people. We have given to the cause and a lot, and in particular, as Dr. Fai said, that ceasefire is required in Srinagar, in Kupwara, in Baramulla, in Sopore, in Anantnag, in Namla, in Uri. No, that is very important. The consequence of this agreement between the military leadership should be that there should be an urgent and immediate relief in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Saab. Well, suggestions. Any other suggestions, comments before we close the meeting? No. Once again,
I would like to intervene on one point, very important point for us, is that what are the steps the AJK government or the Pakistan government is going to take to bring Kashmiris on board? Because that is the most important part, because what we feel, and every time we feel that our voices are not heard as such, they may be taken into account, but we are not on the table, you know, in the sense that what needs to be done in Kashmir. We are the people who are suffering. The people in Kashmir are suffering, you know. A person who is in Srinagar suffers. And if he is not represented, how will the Pakistan government or the AJK government bring them on board?
President Saab, I think you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to listen to Mr. Shah. I follow him on Twitter, and he's been doing a lot of work for the realization of the right to self-determination in Kashmir. I tribute to him. So, but I would say that when you talk about the people of Azad and Kashmir, club them or put them together with the people of the occupied territory, so that the unit remains intact. It's not what the people of Azad Kashmir would do. It is you're saying that what the government of Pakistan ought to do and how it should negotiate with India or third-party facilitators to create space for Kashmiri representatives. As far as I'm concerned, in my public announcements and several statements all over the world in Azad Kashmir and Pakistan, I have said that the Kashmiris' representation must be made imperative when you are engaging with India, for instance, or in fact in any other form. And there's been indirect engagement in the past. I mean, when you would have these rounds of bilateral talks, our leadership and Pakistani leadership will consult Hurriyat leaders or representatives of the Kashmiris from that side, from the occupied side, and also from Pakistan side. But India would object to it. And they, in fact, this BJP RSS government in 2015 got away with that. It didn't get away with that because our government at that time cancelled the talks which were scheduled in New Delhi. So I think that our struggle should continue for inclusion of Kashmiris in Kashmir-related talks. It makes sense. And I fully agree with you. Our efforts will continue publicly and behind the scenes.
Jazakallahu khairan. Any other comments or questions? Right. With that, then, I would like to thank everybody again, once again, and inshallah, we will be holding more seminars and more conferences to create more awareness and clear out as much confusion as possible. Once again, I want to thank the Chief President Saab.
Well, Mr. Zafar Qureshi, it's a pleasure to see you there. This is a platform that we have created, Kashmir campaign global. It's very effective. I mean, it's people like you and Muzammil Thakur and Shasta Safi and others of your age group who can, in fact, reach out to the people all around the world. And I can tell you that social media, and you people are technology savvy, so you can make a huge impact. I did not mention this point, and somebody had mentioned it, that it is basically a political movement. And therefore, we have to turn it into an international civil rights movement. I have said this again and again and again, because I know the dynamics of the United Nations Security Council. They are not going to discuss Kashmir in substantive terms against the current backdrop, geostrategic backdrop. Other forums will not take decisions. Powerful nations, particularly the Western nations who are cultivating India as a counterpoint to Beijing, they would not take any decisions. But the citizens of the world can be your allies and supporters. And therefore, it is very important that we expand the support base that we have, not just amongst traditional diplomats and politicians. Politicians are important, whether that is the Inter-Parliamentary Union or whether these are political leaders all around the world who listen to their constituents. And that's where we need to work, and that's where people like you and platforms like yours can really make a huge difference. I would like to point out that we have groundswell of support in Turkey, in Malaysia, for instance, in many other parts of the world, in ASEAN, for instance. And it is the beginning of that awareness which was missing for years. Let's build on that. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan, President Saab, words. And alhamdulillah, we are trying our best, and our work will continue to create that awareness, lobby, as well as inshallah present the case of Kashmir at every platform. Again, I want to thank every panelist for your time, your contribution, your efforts, and your dedicated support on the Kashmir issue throughout your life. Jazakallah khairan.